Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to Tag Team, the Pokemon Trading Card Games Premier podcast. My name is Riley Holbert, joined as always by my good friend, Mr. Andrew Tricky Jim Mahone. Andrew, how's it hanging today?
I'm having a fantastic Thursday. We're recording a day late this week, so it's Friday Eve, and I am super excited, even though we weren't able to get our pre-releases for Paradox Rift here at Full Grip Games because of the big thing going on with TPCI denying card shops their pre-releases this quarter because of league reporting issues that happened in the spring. I don't know. It's a lot. However, TPCI did send me 2 booster boxes of Paradox Rift and 2 Elite Trainer boxes that I get to open tomorrow. So I'm very excited about that.
Can't complain about that, right? Like
Exactly. So I am very much looking forward to that. And what's crazy is Paradox Rift is a set that's not even out in Japan yet. It's releasing kind of worldwide, like now-ish. This weekend is the first pre-releases, and then the following weekend is like it's out in Japan, and it's nuts.
Yeah. And it's weird because it doesn't seem like they're doing that for the next set. It seems like Japan is getting it first again. It would have been really sick if we had like simul releases going forward. I thought that would have been really fun, but is what it is.
I think it might start to turn into a thing where it's like Japan, because Japan's release schedule is more frequent than ours because they usually get like 2 or 3 sets that combine into one huge bloated international set. So, Japan got
I wish
Paradox.
We did the smaller sets.
Yeah, me too. I mean, God, me too, right? I don't know, man. Apparently we used to. There was base set, jungle, fossil, rocket. And then what happened? Sets used to be 80 cards. Don't tell me you can't do it. We used to do it, man.
Yeah.
We used to do it. But so I digress. Anyways, Paradox Rift is going to be a combination of the Future Flash and Ancient Roar sets that are coming out in Japan October 27th, and then the Raging Surf set, which is already out in Japan, right? So with the Goldengo EX and the Garchomp EX and all of that. So Japan gets those sets, before us, and then it seems like maybe we're all kind of releasing every other set or so kind of at the same time.
Yeah.
So like Obsidian Flames released in Japan and internationally right about the same time, and then Raging Surf came out super early. They had that for a while. We didn't. And now we're going to be all on the same page again with Future Flash, Ancient Roar, and Paradox Rift. And then I suspect Japan will get another, set. And we won't get it. But then when the following set, we'll probably all get it at the same time, right? So
that makes sense. Like they're getting a half set basically in between our full sets, and then we sync up like within every full set. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
And it seems like that's what we're doing, and I'm cool with it. I mean, it's fun, it's exciting. It makes things a little bit more difficult than it was for the last year or two, considering I was just sourcing the Japanese cards, which are coming out months ahead of the English cards. So I was like, I have all this time to get my cards and make my productions or whatever. But now it's a little more exciting because it's like, whoa, where am I going to get my cards? Where am I going to source this stuff? Do I have to make proxies now? What am I doing? So
I will say from like a different angle, competitive standpoint, I think it's kind of cool that we have that more simultaneous release, because then people don't just like lean into the Japanese meta to like form their entire opinion of the state of the game. We get to like simultaneously explore it, and like which is also cool because we get to see like how we differ in our reads of the meta, so I think it'll be really interesting.
It's super exciting. Actually, the testing session that Jesse and I did for the Paradox Rift cards that aren't out yet, right, in Japan either, I posted some lists on Twitter, and they're just like my first draft list. I'm kind of just tooling around with the set, with the cards. I remember talking to Jesse leading up to it, and Jesse's like, I'm going to be honest with you, Andrew. I got no idea what to do with these cards without looking at lists from Japan. So he's like, I'm going to leave it up to you to kind of like build the decks. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
fine. And that's what I love. I love brewing and building decks.
I know,
And
you're a cook.
yeah, I love cooking, dude. So like, I'll spend all night at the kitchen table just fishbowl in hands and get the deck to draw gas, right? And that's really exciting for me. But those lists that I posted on Twitter, like the Roaring Moon list, it hit Japanese Twitter and then Japanese Pokemon TCG Twitter, and boom, it's got like 1,200 likes, which is like insane for like
numbers.
a non-tournament winning deck list.
Oh yeah, it's so satisfying when you have like a novel list that hits the Japanese Twitter. Like they love it.
They do love it, and it's so sick. Yeah, I'm so amped because, well, and that's the thing about being an English-speaking Pokemon TCG players. Like, even if we do have good novel ideas or like good deck construction in the past, we never got to flex any of that because Japan always did it first. So
right.
So it's really exciting.
No, I like that. Yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think it'll encourage creativity across both sides and allow us both to kind of learn from each other as we go throughout the format, which is really cool. Yeah, I think that's really fun. Sort of promotes the international state of the game that I know Pokemon is really interested in fostering.
It definitely does. So that's what I got on my agenda, the Paradox Rift stuff. What about you, Riley? How you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's been a rough week. I'm not going to lie. Monday was my birthday and I woke up just horrendously sick. So I spent like most of this week like bedridden. I finally emerged from my cocoon on Wednesday afternoon, and you can probably hear in my voice like I definitely got some like nasally stuffiness right now, but I feel fine right now. Tomorrow though, I'm doing a birthday sort of celebration dinner with my girlfriend. We're gonna go do like a wine tasting 7-course meal type of deal. And that'll be a lot of fun. So just fingers crossed that both of us are healthy enough to actually do it. I think I'll be fine. I'm just worried that she will get sick now. So.
Oh no.
Because she's a little sniffly when I called her today. But
happy belated birthday to you, and
Thank you.
hopefully you both have a great time this weekend. As far as upcoming weekends go, you're not going to Toronto, right?
No, I am not.
Yes, and neither am I. But I did just get all of my stuff squared away for LAIC, which is really exciting for me. I've never been to South America. I know LAIC was one of your like most fond memories of a tournament that you'd ever experienced. So.
Yeah, LAIC was crazy. I had a lot of fun when I was there.
What year did you go? Tell us a little bit about your experience in LAIC. We got an agenda today, but we're kind of moseying our way into it.
Yeah, I think some of the Riley LAIC lore you got to get to know me a little better for me to share all of it. But but I went to LAIC in 2018, so I graduated college in 2018. And I took 6 months between graduating and starting like actual full-time employment. And I just kind of lived off of money that I had and couch surfed with my friends and did Pokemon stuff and other stuff that interested me. And one of those things was going to LAIC that year. So Jimmy Pendarvis actually kind of messaged me out of the blue and is like, hey, I found this really cheap flight from Orlando to Brazil. Like, do you want to go? And I'm like, you know what? I got nothing else. I literally have nothing else going on. I'm unemployed. Like, let's do it. So we did it. So we basically were on like the Spirit Airlines of Brazil is how I would frame it. And it was me and Jimmy and Pramwa and a couple other people were on this flight. And it was a lot of fun. I didn't like have a lot of plans because I didn't know a ton of people that were going. Especially people that were like, not already in like a room situation. So I ended up sleeping on like the couch basically. But couch is like an overstatement. It was like an armchair, I was sleeping on an armchair and I had an ottoman and I stretched out across the armchair and the ottoman and like that was my bed. So it's like I had the worst back pain, but I had so much fun. Brazil is a really like awesome country. The Brazilian players were so welcoming and so cool. And it was like a really nice like bonding moment for the couple of American players that I hung out with while I was there. And Danny was kind of within our group, and obviously he ended up winning, so that was really cool as well.
That's right.
Yeah, he won with
so
the
sick.
like DQ at the end. That was a really bizarre situation, but he did win. So
That's so crazy.
Although I maintain I played Zoro Control completely independently of like the DDG group of that time. I just came up with it like that night. And they didn't tell me their deck, obviously. And I built a variant that like 100-0'd their variant to Zoro Control, which was really funny because I played basic energy in Faba and they only played special energy. So I was able just to loss on all of their Ranguru's energy. And I did play one of them in Swiss in like round 3 and swiftly beat them. I was like 1 win or 4 points maybe short of top 8. I maintain that I would have won if I was in top 8, but
it's all good. There's a regional, that I would have won had I been in top 8 as well.
I mean, you can always spin that, right? Like, there's always a way you can spin that, but like,
I got plenty of regionals I would have won if I was in top 8.
For sure. Yeah, I probably would have won all the regionals, honestly, if I made top 8 all of them.
Yeah,
but like that's my stone that I like to throw.
2018, bro. Dallas 2018.
No, you wouldn't have.
We literally I finished 9th place on opponents I finished 9th place on resistance or whatever. Riley was top seed. If I had been the 8th seed, Riley,
but it would have been different that day, right? Because I was unstoppable that day.
Bro, we played that match. I swamped you, bro.
Yeah, but that wasn't that day.
On that day, that's true. That's true.
I was literally unbeatable that weekend.
I swamped
like literally
you, bro.
unbeatable. Like people could not beat me.
and then my 2017 top 4 Memphis regionals where I lost to Azul on like the final turn of game 3. It came down to the wire and he top decked Guzma for game. But if he had not top decked that Guzma and I had one more turn, then I win. And I have win in hand and on board. And then I go on to play Pramawat, who I had already beat twice that tournament in day 1 and day 2 Swiss. So that's another one.
For sure, man.
But speaking of...
You're really good.
Speaking of regional winners, coulda, woulda, shoulda, yeah. Speaking of regional winners and regional top 8s and all of that, we wanted to talk about Sacramento a little bit today, being that it was a big, 1,500 player regional on the West Coast.
1,400, which is huge on the West Coast.
It is huge. I mean, usually West Coast regionals, even right up to the end of the pandemic and even post-pandemic, we're not cracking 1,000 players. Yeah. And like historically, they'd been more around a handful of 100 players. So really for a West Coast regional to be up in 1,400 range is like, you figure like, that was NAIC level. I mean, those are international championship level, attendance numbers. To get that on the West Coast for a regional is big deal for sure.
Yeah. And in spite of all of that, we had a very homogenous top cut, I would say, right? So amongst the top 8, there were 4 people that were playing the colorless Lugia variant. Slight differences across their lists, but still fundamentally that colorless Lugia archetype. And then we also had 2 lost boxes. So 6 of the top 8 was just 2 different decks.
That's crazy, yeah. And then rounding out the rest of the top 8, there was an Arceus deck featuring Gyarados VMAX and a Gardevoir EX deck. Azul is, was in the top 8, the most and the most well-known player in the top 8s, but Charlie Kerr was also there. He was a regional finalist from last year. I think the big takeaway from Sacramento regionals was the high amount of Lugia VSTAR after, in Peoria, Lugia VSTAR, the colorless variant, wasn't really looking like it was like the deck to win the event. I mean, especially with the amount of Miraidon that was showing up, multiple Miraidons in top 8. And then here, colorless Lugia just kind of taking over. So what do you think kind of set the stage for colorless Lugia to do so well at Sacramento, Riley?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, colorless Lugia's matchup spread when you ignore Miraidon is insane. It's just absolutely nuts. And we have even said as much on the podcast just a couple of weeks ago, how if you're willing to like accept that L to Miraidon, you like basically sweep the field with colorless Lugia. And that's like kind of what we saw in Sacramento. Miraidon was very popular in Sacramento. It was the third most popular deck, I believe, in day one, but it didn't convert very well. My guess is there's like a chain of events that led to Lugia being so good. And that's that Lost Box surged hard in popularity. And as we've seen, just even on stream matches, Lost Box is not an easy matchup for Miraidon. I mean, we saw Jesse and JW both get destroyed on stream against Lost Box, the turbo variant. And I think like, and that was just in Peoria. So the spike in Lost Box made the conversion rate of Miraidon worse. And then subsequently, like Lugia loves Lost Box and it loves pretty much everything that's not Miraidon. So when you have those like multiple factors working in tandem with each other, it seems almost natural that Lugia would do so well. And it's also natural that people would pick up Lost Box in higher numbers, right? Like it won the last 2 regionals in a row. Like, yeah, it makes sense that people would want to play it. It's that deck right now. So, and even then there were 2 in top 8, right? So
yeah.
So I think it makes sense.
I'm blown away by the amount of Lugia. I mean, for half of top 8 is just such a wild amount. In my opinion, for a deck that, I mean, I have a hard time stomaching the Lugia experience right now. The way that it is, the way that it feels to play. It feels broken once you set it up, but at getting to the setup stage just feels so bad. But maybe that's just maybe that's something that I kind of need to get over personally. Now, the story with Sacramento, obviously, you had Alexander with the win, Lugia Archeops, and Nicolo with the Arceus Gyarados VMAX deck in second place. It was their first regional championships ever, and to have 2 brand new players, their first ever regionals, both make it to the finals. And there's more money on the line, at these regional championships than there's ever been. There's been a lot of criticism of the play that was seen on stream from not just the finals match. I mean, every match leading up to the finals, the top 8 match, the top 4 match, and the finals match. There were some definitely some routing errors. There are definitely some questionable decisions, misplays. And this isn't the first time we've seen misplays in top 8, but it felt like that was more or less dominating the conversations that I was hearing about this regional championship. So when I went to go stream on Monday, I mean, my Twitch chat was telling, go watch it. We want to see you react to the top 8, top 4 and finals. And it was like, oh, there's a lot going on here. So do you think that was it just kind of like happenstance that there happened to be a little bit more of questionable plays happening in this regional championships than before? Is it because there's an influx of new players? Is it that there always have been questionable plays like this at regional championships, but now that there's more money on the line, people are more critical of there being questionable plays at the top end of tournaments because the winners are getting an absurd amount of money, $10,000 for a win, $7,000 for a second place? Like, is it because it's like, if they're playing like that, how are they winning that much money, right? Like, so what do you think what do you think's really going on there, Riley?
My guess is it's a combination of things. I think there are misplays like fairly frequently, even all the way up until finals of tournaments. You see it happen all the time. I think there were a few more for sure over the course of this top cut than what I'm used to seeing, but it's not unheard of. Like, you see people make mistakes all the time. And I think in those high pressure situations, like, it's easy to make mistakes. I think sometimes people just need to like slow down and like check themselves a little bit more, because they make like simple mistakes that they know were mistakes even in the moment, and they just like screwed up. But that aside, I think the mistakes were also in the spotlight a little bit more, and I don't think it's because of the prize money. I think it's because the narrative around this tournament. And what I mean by that is Alexander and Nicolo, the finalists of this tournament, it was both of their first regional championship. And with that, of course, like comes inexperience, right? Comes like the misplays. But also, I think there was almost like a sense of like comeuppance by like players in the community who felt like, oh, like they can't just show up and like get the finals of their first tournament. Like I'm going to nitpick them to death, you know? And I saw some like really hostile attitudes and takes on Twitter. And I think part of it is simply the fact that these players showed up for their first regional and did so well, and people like didn't like that and like want to tear them apart. And again, like they did make mistakes and they did make misplays, but I do think there's a little bit of like malevolence involved by like the discourse.
Toxic takes on Twitter? No. You
Yeah,
didn't.
man.
No, not it. Not in Pokemon.
Yeah.
You didn't see that.
I did. I really did. I know,
Man,
it's hard to believe.
I can't believe it. Yeah.
But you know what I'm
tough.
saying? Like
I do. Yeah, it's tough.
You know, people feel like they deserve their turn if
yes.
you know.
It's tough and it's hard. I will say, like, there is a lot of luck that goes into having a tournament run like come together just right. You do need, you know, part of it needs to be your day, part of it you need to play really well. I mean, look at like Azul obviously is like the best player in North America, and you know, got into top 8 and lost to a guy who it's his first regional, you know, and that it doesn't matter. Like at a certain point, like no amount of Azul's skill was going to get him through that door to top 4. It wasn't happening. You know, the cards weren't falling in his favor. The matchup wasn't there. It just wasn't happening. Right. So, and you could see like it didn't matter. It doesn't matter that Azul was the best player in top 8 by a lot. Right. By like an obscene margin. It didn't matter. Right. So that can be frustrating sometimes when you have like the best player with the most skill intensive deck not able to route his way to a victory, even when he doesn't have much further to go. It's like only has, you know, 2 more sets, you know, come on, like these guys, this is their first tournament, come on, you know, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because and some of that can be frustrating because players that have worked really hard for a really long time and are truly extraordinarily talented at the game will feel like a sense of entitlement, or that they earn or owed something, or just frustration in that they know where their skill level is, and that maybe they're not performing up to where they expect to be, but someone who maybe, you know, players who who haven't invested as much time as they have, getting that payoff. I mean, and it's just like those feelings are toxic, and you kind of have to just like shake them off and really focus on your own race. Is what it comes down to. You can't be constantly comparing yourself to other people and saying like, oh well, I deserve this, or I expect this or that, or you know, that will fizzle you out as a player faster than anything, and is absolutely a toxic attitude that you can't really entertain. But I see how it happens.
Yeah, I think one of my big like guiding principles heading into this year was trying to be less results oriented and more like play oriented, so to speak. Like I just want to make sure that I'm really satisfied with the way I played my tournament, the deck I chose to bring, the card choices I made within that deck. And, you know, if I just hit a bunch of bad matchups and lose, like I want to at least be able to say with confidence, like I did the best possible thing I could every single round in those matchups. Right. And I think just that results oriented mentality just is toxic. And, you know, I mean, you could even take this to its logical extreme, right? Like a theme deck could show up to a regional and theoretically win if all of their opponents dead draw, right? Yeah. Like that is something that could happen. It's never going to happen, I think, but like you give enough monkeys, enough typewriters, and like that will happen eventually.
The Oddish will win Worlds one time.
Yes, the Oddish will win Worlds, just like Path of the Peak. And so all that to say is like there is an element of luck, and like Pokemon is about min-maxing that for yourself, right? Like,
it is.
It's not about it's not just what am I trying to say? Like luck will always be a factor, and your job as a player is to put yourself in the situation where you're most likely to be the most lucky, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, that's That's why someone like Azul, I mean, see, he cracked into the top 8. That's not a surprise for anybody that knows Azul as a player. And this obviously wasn't his top 8 to win. And that's okay. And he understands that, and he also understood that at the first 2 regionals of the year, where he scrubbed out of both of them and did not day 2 either, he understood that those 2 tournaments didn't define him as a player, right? And then Here you go, the very next event, is in the top 8. So in a lot of ways, you have to have a short-term memory, because you have to you can't marinate and let things really consume you. If it didn't go your way, you just kind of have to brush it off. But you do have to look back critically at your play and what happened and what things you could be doing better. But then you can't lament. You can't over lament on things not working out or going your way, or you not performing up to your expectations of your of your peers and things like that. And I do think that having a team really helps with that. I mean, for me specifically, being able to share in the success with, JW and Jesse and Zeely and you, as you guys were, really doing well the first couple regionals here. And then similarly, you guys being able to cheer me on at Worlds. It was just having that team atmosphere made us feel like we were doing something right, even if it wasn't our day, right? Which you could look at and be like, no, we made a good choice. Look, that buffed out there, right? It just, can't be everybody's day all at once.
Well, I think also exactly, right? Having a peer group sort of normalizes the luck in a way. It flattens that curve out and makes it so you all, in aggregate, you'll probably have the average experience that you're supposed to have with your level of play and the deck that you brought. So anyway, all that to say is don't hate on Alexander and Nicolo just because it was their first tournament. And I also want to say they were thoughtful. They made thoughtful decisions about their decks. They were able to clearly articulate why they chose their decks and the plays that they made. So it's not it's not they're complete idiots, right? Who showed up not knowing how to play the game.
No.
They're competent players. Maybe they're not Azul, Garcia, Griego, but I think just the discourse around them is super toxic. And I want to make that clear. I think they're good players. I think they certainly have stuff to learn, but that's fine, right?
Yeah.
Everyone
exactly.
does. I had stuff to learn when I won my first regional.
Yep. They made a good call, both of them, for the day. They knew their decks well enough to get within striking distance of a regional finals, right? They knew their deck well enough to get there. They did. Mm-hmm. And you have to assume that there was scenarios throughout the weekend where they made, decisions and plays that would have been really good ones in order to get to where they were. And that, the small snapshot that we get of top 8, top 4 and finals is not indicative of the entire scope of these tournament runs. Now, I think it's a really interesting thing, and I think that Alexander and Nicolo and everybody who finished in the top 8 should be very proud of how they played and very proud of their accomplishments. And honestly, just brush off anything anybody has to say, because you're the ones with the medals, and you guys are the
so
ones
true, man.
And you guys are the ones with the accomplishments, and haters are going to stay
and
mad.
The bag.
And the bag, yes. So haters are going to stay mad. Don't sweat it. That would be if I heard Alexander and Nicolo and if they were concerned at all about what any sore loser has to say, I would say don't sweat it and be very proud of yourself, because you got it. You got what everybody else wants. So
true. So I think the one other thing that I wanted to hit on with regards to Sacramento is more of a broader scale takeaway, and that's Andrew and I were talking a lot before the cast, and we've talked a lot over the years about sort of coaching, and I don't want to make this a coaching soapbox, so let's avoid that if we can. But Andrew, I'm curious, what the takeaway is of for new players or for your average player that you're playing in a regional. What do you think the number one thing that they should focus on to level up their play is? We talked a lot about sort of my take on the matter. I'm curious if you have a different one, or we could just dive into my opinion.
Yeah, I think coaching in the Pokemon TCG, I mean, it's a huge thing now. I mean, you look at...
It's an industry.
It's an industry now. It literally, Metafy, right, is a huge thing. And Metafy is is like a gaming coaching website where you could get coached for any kind of esport game. There's Valorant, there's League of Legends, Rocket League, Smash Brothers, and the Pokemon TCG, amongst various other things. And if you are on Metafy and you go to Pokemon TCG section, you're going to see coaches like Azul, you're going to see Zach Lesage, Gabe Smart, a whole bunch of other people, Cyrus Davis, right? I mean, just Isaiah Bradner, Pablo, Celio's Network, even JW Krewall is on there. So, there's a whole bunch of people. It's a whole thing. You can get coached by Tord if you want to, right? And so people ask about coaching all the time. A lot of people want to know, is coaching worth getting into? Is it worth paying money? What kind of things can I expect from a coach? Which coaches do you recommend? Do you recommend coaching at all? It's a huge thing. We could probably do an entire cast just on the idea of coaching.
Yeah, and I would love to do that. I would.
And I think we should. We should someday. I mean, you've done coaching before, Riley, right?
I have, yeah.
Yes, and I've done coaching before, and JW's done coaching before. We've all done coaching, and it's a complicated thing. I mean, obviously, being a great player doesn't make you a great coach. But in order to be a good coach, you have to be, I'd say, at least like a player that's like,
you gotta have your fundies.
You gotta be a player who's capable of doing really well at a tournament, I'd say, right? Yeah. In order to like kind of prove your salt at a certain point, you have to be able to extend and have those results in order to like say like, yeah, I know what, if you're coaching somebody for a tournament run, then you ought to know what the tournament runs are like,
Yeah.
In order to help guide them. For me personally, I feel like, and this is kind of what you were saying before, but I agree, is that coaching can kind of all be boiled down to asking the right questions or teaching somebody to ask the right questions as they play the game. And that's the way that I approach coaching when I do it, is that we're not just going to sit down and look at like limitless decks and like pick the right one for you and like play a couple games and I'll tell you what's going wrong, what you did wrong, and then that's the end of the session. Because that I might help you like maybe kind of tweak a couple plays that you made in that one best of 3, but that's not going to help you when I'm not here talking over your shoulder, telling you exactly what to do. So my goal as a coach is always going to be like, all right, are you preparing yourself for success at the beginning of the turn when you draw your card? Are you in the right mindset? Are you thinking the right way? Are you asking the right questions that are going to lead you to the correct things? So for me, it's all about teaching a potential player or client or, whatever, to ask the right questions. So start your turn and ask, what am I trying to accomplish? What's the best way to accomplish that? What is my opponent trying to accomplish? How can I keep them from accomplishing that? And those are kind of like the major core questions that you're going to ask every time right before you draw a card that should logically help you to unravel your turn and unpack your turn. And every action that you do should be playing into one of those questions that you started by asking. What am I trying to accomplish? What's my opponent trying to accomplish? How can I either accomplish or deny my opponent from accomplishing either of those things?
Yeah, and fundamentally, I agree. The way I refer to it is typically as routing. And I think when I compare Pokemon against other card games, the one I know the best is Yu-Gi-Oh! Unfortunately, so I'm going to use Yu-Gi-Oh! As my example.
Unfortunately,
that's saying like as an ex Yu-Gi-Oh! Player, though I wasn't like super serious about it. I was like a local warrior type of guy. When you compare like Yu-Gi-Oh! For example, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has like disruption, right? It has hand traps. It has ways to like during your opponent's turn to interact with them. I think a misconception that people have is that makes the game inherently more or less skillful. It doesn't, one way or the other. Like the games themselves and sort of the play of those games is what makes it more or less skillful. So anyway, comparing Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is about using the cards that are in your hand and like assembling the most unbreakable board state, undisruptible board state possible. Like getting through your opponent's disruption until one of you wins. And again, that isn't necessarily more skillful or less skillful than Pokemon. Pokemon is different in that you're drawing a lot of cards and you have access to most of your deck on most turns. And so in Pokemon, the question is less like, what can I do with like these 5 cards in my opening hand to assemble the Unbreakable board? Like, how can I piece them together? It's more about how can I use the contents across the entirety of my deck to route out a game plan over the next 3, 4, 5 turns. And that's like the exact thing you were getting at, Andrew, is like, what can I do to get to my win condition? And I feel like a lot of players get stuck in like the turn that they're on, or they get stuck on like the immediate next turn and don't always have a clear vision for how they're winning the game. I'm going to use an example from one of Alexander's games as a point to illustrate this. This does not reflect Alexander's character or himself as a player at large.
Learning experience, coaching experience,
but,
and it's just something that a lot of people watch. So people are going to be familiar with the play that you're talking about.
Yeah. And there's a couple from the entirety of the top 8, but one that I like to focus on in particular, during game 2, I believe, against Dorians, this is top 4, the Lugia VSTAR mirror. Alexander had previously attacked with a Luxray to take a Lugia V-Star knockout and catch up in the prize exchange. Dorian ended up bossing at Archeops, which I didn't love that boss anyway, but that aside, the following turn, though, it was Alexander at 4 prizes, Dorian at 3, and on that turn, Alexander opted to attack with his Snorlax. And I think this is a really good example of like routing to your win condition, right? So
and didn't just like decide to attack with Snorlax. I mean, like pumped energy from the deck to the Snorlax to attack with it, right?
Was like actively working towards attacking with that Snorlax. And to me, this is a great example of like how routing could have improved his odds to win the game. Alexander didn't go on to win this game, but he would have been more likely to be in a better position if he changed his play. And so on that turn, it would have been much more efficient to attack with the Luxray. Right. Why? Well, he had 1 Archeops in play, so his energy acceleration was limited. He could have still powered up that Snorlax, but kept it safe on the bench, for example. Whereas the Luxray, as soon as you start to catch up or get ahead in your opponent in the prize race, it no longer can attack at all. You can only use it while that reversal is active. So to get the most out of your energy while you only have 1 Archeops in play, you want to be attacking with that reversal energy as much as possible. And instead, offering that Snorlax offers multiple energy now that can be knocked out and removed from your board. And it potentially leads to a situation where you will no longer be able to use your Luxray on a future turn if you end up catching up in the prize race. And it's those little things like that that add up over the course of a tournament and contribute to your win percentage, right? There was another great example where Alexander opted to attack with a Lugia on the final turns of game 2. He ended up not having the energy to attack, which ended up being a good thing.
It's crazy. His opponent had win in hand with Luxray reversal. If he had taken the knockout, he went to take the knockout, but then the way he's stacking his energy, it's like he couldn't see that he had only 3 energy on the Lugia, so then he missed the attack. But even then, that wasn't the correct Pokemon to be attacking with in that moment.
Right. And so I would guess that the logic is this is my like biggest Pokemon, the hardest to knock out, but it doesn't really matter if Dorian takes a 1 prize knockout, right? It only matters, Dorian is at 2 prizes in this situation. It only matters if Dorian is able to take a Lugia V-Star knockout. That's his only win condition on that turn. And so you should always be attacking with a lower maintenance 1 prize attacker. It could even be the Archeops, honestly, like anything other than the Lugia. And again, he ended up winning that game. But again, it's those little things that add up over the course of a tournament and could lose you games, right? If he was able to successfully attack with that Lugia as he had intended, he would have lost that game and potentially the set, and then maybe wouldn't have won the regional.
I think there was a number of situations in top 8 where it felt like even the wrong promotion was happening, right? And because
Yeah.
when you get into Lugia, with Lugia V-Star, there's only a couple of things that you have to do right, and promoting the right Pokemon is like half the battle, right?
It actually is really important.
It's extremely important. We saw in top 8, like Charlie Kerr literally lost because he promoted Radiant Charizard on a turn he had no business trying to attack with Radiant Charizard. It was just like mind-blowing. Like, that is not the guy. Not only is their path out, you like also only your opponent only has one prize left. Like, what's going on here? Like, you got a Lugia right there, right? So then like he realizes it like after his supporter, and then has to then retreat the Charizard with his only energy left in deck. And that ends up costing him the game because his opponent is able to just gust the Charizard and strand it there for a turn, and he is not able to move it. So
I think he did have one jet, but it was like the bottom of his deck. But
he researched and he missed it. Right.
Even then, like, he didn't have to be in that situation,
No.
The final example I'll use is a little more nuanced of a one and maybe up for debate. But in the finals, in Game 3, Alexander had taken the first knockout with a Lugia, and it's going into Nicolo's turn now. Nicolo has an Arceus with a water on it. He promotes that, and he doesn't really have a good hand. He has a Melanie, Boss's Order is a Path, and maybe one other card. I forget what the card was. And what he ended up doing was he Melanied to the active, attached a V-Guard to it, and swung into Lugia. Not the worst play in the world, but I just don't think that's a winning play ever, because you have two 220 HP Pokemon on the bench now that your opponent can gust and knock out. And if they do take that knockout, then you kind of just lose to Wordier. What Nicolo could have done instead is make a much more aggressive play, and I think this would have actually been the only play where he could feasibly win the game, starting from behind with the Arceus deck. And that would have been to boss the Lumineon and just be barrel up and hope that you hit the V-Star. And actually, if you watch the game, he would have hit the double turbo and the V-Star off of the V-Barrel if he played the boss, and he would have taken a 2-prize knockout. He could have only benched Slacking, so he didn't have any like liabilities on the bench, and powered that up, and he would have actually been in a pretty good spot from there.
Right, because the Lugia had 4 damage counters on it. Like, Slacking could have cleaned that up. So then you're talking about the routing, right? And it's those things where, and that kind of links all we were talking about with like coaching and all that back together. It really felt like there were some kind of fundamentals or basics in routing that could have been tightened up amongst a lot of the players that we saw in top 8, and it created a lot of good learning experiences, a lot of good coaching experiences, frankly, because you could kind of watch these plays and say like, all right, well, I could see how maybe this is, the play that was landed on, but wouldn't this route be, slightly more optimal, or wouldn't this route, maybe if we took a look this way, you could have wiggled your way through that situation. And you got to know in that last situation, you got to know when to go for a risky route, because the alternative is that you have like a 2% chance of winning. Like, if the route that Nicolo ended up going with, the Melanie route, swing into the active, that's got a very close to 0% chance of winning him that game overall. I think at that point, Alexander's board is established. He's already ahead 2 prizes. Like, you're in deep water, bud. Like, you gotta play for the win. But then, like, if you hit the knockout on the Luminion, you're going from like a almost unwinnable board to like there's like maybe you're
probably still not 40%, but like you're much closer.
You have like a realistic shot of winning if you hit that play, right? So
right. And that's what it always boils down to. And I think the one takeaway I would have for my listeners here is don't stay focused rather on the turn that's in front of you. Like, make sure you have a plan for how the game is going to play out, right? Like, and if that plan means that you take a riskier option, then that's fine. Like, that's the plan, right? But you have to know what your actual plan to win the game is. And if you aren't able to like articulate that in your games, like take some steps back, like play some games with your friends and like really think through what are the couple of turns that I need to be taking to win the game, and what does my opponent need to do to stop me from doing that, and how can I prevent that? And once you start asking like those couple of questions, you'll significantly level up your game and have a much more consistent tournament result.
Yes. I mean, and my big thing for players who are trying to improve is, before you draw your card for turn, before you promote the Pokemon that you need to promote for turn, you ask yourself, what is the best case scenario for my turn? What's the best thing that I can accomplish on my turn this turn? What am I trying to do? And what is going to lead me to being able to do that? Before you draw, before you promote, all that, right? Because you need to think about that before you promote. So if you're like, oh, okay, my opponent's got 1 prize left, I need to promote a 2-prizer, right? Those kinds of things. That's why before you promote, look at the prize cards, remaining, and maybe ask your opponent how many cards are in their hand. You want to gather as much information as you can so that every decision you make is the most informed it can possibly be, right? Then you promote, you draw, and then you start routing, and you're also asking yourself, what is my opponent like? You're not just asking, what do I need to accomplish, but what does my opponent need to accomplish? And you're constantly playing, a judgment kind of game where you're trying to judge, like, how much do I need to do to help me accomplish the win? And how much do I need to do to prevent them from winning? Most of the time, you're just playing for yourself to win, but sometimes you have to play defensively too and say, like, I don't have the thing that's going to help me to win this turn, but maybe if I get one more turn, I will. So I need to stop my opponent from winning for 1 turn. Right. And it's just like, once you kind of start thinking about the game as a logic puzzle where you're just kind of asking yourself those questions, it kind of opens the whole box and you really start to kind of see the game in a better perspective, and it's going to help you to win more games.
So to round out the cast, we spent a lot of time talking about Sacramento and sort of coaching and growing as a player. Let's just do a quickie on Paradox Rift. So Paradox Rift coming out in pre-release form this weekend. Andrew, I want to hear your top 3 cards, and I want to hear your favorite art card. So we'll both take turns on that. We'll both do our top 3, and then we'll both do our favorite art. So why don't you kick us off with the cards that you're most looking forward to from a player perspective coming out of Paradox Rift?
Yeah, this is a really exciting set, as we've kind of already discussed. I mean, it just seems like there's such an insane level of playable cards in this set. It seems like it's going to be one of those sets that we're talking about for years to come. And it perhaps kind of suggests a new direction with the Scarlet and Violet era, with the future and the ancient, gimmicks. It's cool. The cards and cards are still being kind of like released, or not released, but like revealed. Yeah, right now. I mean, so it's all happening right now. So I can't wait to get into testing this more. The cards that I'm most excited about, first up, Xatu. All right. Xatu. And it's just because it's a Gym Leader Challenge card, okay? And it's not going to be It's not going to be good in Standard, but it is going to be an all-star in Gym Leader Challenge, and it might be okay in Standard. But you know me, I love Gym Leader Challenge. Psychic is busted. They just can't stop themselves over at Creatures from printing insane Psychic cards. This Xatu has 100 HP, a retreat cost of 1. And it's Shadow Rider, dude. It's just you attach a basic Psychic from your hand to one of your bench Pokemon and draw 2 cards. Like, they gave Shadow Rider to just a Xatu, man.
Yeah. Granted, it doesn't have Shadow Rider's excellent attack, but I was really shocked when I saw the ability. It was literally just Shadow Rider.
on like just a stage 1, man. Like, it's crazy. Part of what made Shadow Rider so good is it's 320 HP. It's attack that can one-hit KO anything. Sure. I think that in Standard format right now, Gardevoir EX is just going to reign supreme for accelerating Psychic Energy into play. It's unlimited Psychic Energy from the discard pile. That's pretty good.
I mean, it's pretty good.
But in Gym Leader Challenge, Xatu combined with Malamar from Forbidden Light, you have these this kind of like 1-2 punch for accelerating energy. You can accelerate energy from the hand, you can accelerate energy from the discard pile, and now you have like a whole engine for accelerating energy, which is just going to make Psychic Gym Leader Challenge decks even more powerful than they are already. And
that's really sick.
So that one's one that I know for a fact that is going to change Psychic decks. My next card that I'm very excited about is the Evolution TM. I think the Evolution TM is going to be nuts. I think that card is not only a Gym Leader Challenge card, it is also most definitely a standard card.
Yes.
And I think that it is going to take Arven from being like this card that's already... Like, there's already an Arven engine, right? It's like the 4 Seal Stone, the 4 Arven. It's the Charizard deck, right? Use Arven and 4 Seal Stone, and you just explosively set up your strategy. Now, with the Evolution TM, you have these Arven decks just have another weapon to really get set up quickly. So I think between the Evolution TM and the Turbo Energized TM, which accelerates 2 energy to your bench Pokemon in any way you can kind of play this Arven toolbox style deck, literally a toolbox because they're tools. Yeah. And get it? But yeah, I think that the Evolution TM is extremely exciting. And then for the final card that I am most excited about, I will select... I'm going to leave some for you.
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah. I'll say Goldengo EX. Yo, Goldengo EX, he's cool,
I was
man.
going to say Goldengo. He's awesome.
He's just so cool. He's this stack of gold coins. I mean, I don't think that I understood originally that Goldengo is just a bunch of coins stacked on one another. That's why he's tubular.
Yeah.
But he's kind of sick, and he can one-hit KO things. You could draw cards. He's a goofy dude. He likes surfs and stuff. I'm kind of digging. I think Goldengo
is so random. I love it.
I think Goldengo is neat. And as far as the artwork goes, oh man, there's a lot of really, really nice cards here.
We'll save the artwork for very last. So
you
can
do your
browse
3. I'll
for a
think.
second.
Yeah, your 3.
Yeah. So for me, one card I have to give a shout out to is Countercatcher being reprinted. I loved Countercatcher when it was in the format. As a big like Zoroark head, Countercatcher was a great like inclusion in Zoroark to navigate tricky matchups, get a cool gust in there. Also really good as a control player myself and enjoying that sort of strategy. Countercatcher, an amazing card for that. I just really like kind of the come from behind type of cards, and the Countercatcher to me feels like a really good balance of it's a really powerful effect, but it is rate limited by being behind on prizes, right? And it's also an item which aren't like super easy to like recycle or get back. So it's not like you're doing it infinitely in most cases. So I really like Countercatcher. I'm excited for it to come back. Another card that I think is really, really sick is the Roaring Moon EX. Roaring Moon is so crazy. Like, that attack is nuts, man. Like, just knock out your opponent's Pokemon. Like, what is that? I'm not sure like how good it'll be because of the prevalence of one prize attackers in the meta. It's not like phenomenal into one prizers.
You can
like,
Calamity Storm them, bro.
I know you can Calamity Storm them, but like, you know, you're not trading super well into them ultimately. But it's still like so sick, and Frenzied Gouging is also like an insane attack name. Like, that's the most metal attack name I've ever seen on a Pokemon card. So
it is.
Love
and that is the English translation. Yeah. Frenzied Gouging. Yeah.
Yeah. No holds barred on that one. That was sick.
Oh no, man. You could give it 60 more hit points with the tool card.
Yeah, man, those 60 HP is going to be what saves you.
290. Okay, against a single, like Gardevoir. But then against Gardevoir, like, dude, you're dark. You don't, but I think it's almost, you know, you have to mention Sada's Vitality when you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the, I'm not going to have that occupy its own slot, but Sada's Vitality, like, is just nuts as a, it's like everything Walter wanted to be, and more somehow. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Loading up 2 attackers at the same time is gnarly.
Yeah, so that card's obviously nuts. And then I really want a Goldango. I was hoping you wouldn't say it because I really like Goldango. But I think another card that I think is going to make a huge impact on the meta is the I forget the exact English translation, but the ancient professor's letter where you discard a card and search 2 basic energy out of your deck. I think that card's going to be really good. The Earthen Vessel, yes. Is I guess that's like based off of the vessel that Ting Lu is or something like that. I don't know. But the Earthen Vessel, Professor's Letter was an insanely powerful card. Like, let's set that record straight on that one. Professor's Letter was broken. And this is just in some ways, better version of it. Like, you get to thin your hand and thin your deck while you use it. Like, obviously, you can make arguments that the free cost Professor's Letter is better in some ways, but honestly, it's good to get cards in the discard pile. So I think this card is nuts. I think it's going to enable things like playing off-color attackers in Chen Pao Baxcalibur decks. I think is going to be its most obvious immediate application. But really, like, as there are more energy acceleration options, like, this is only going to get better as a card. Like, you could even play this in Gardevoir. You could play this in any ancient deck to use with your Professor Setas. Like, completely nuts, ridiculously powerful, and I think it'll open up some creative deck building choices.
As far as artwork goes, all right, I think I got some picked out. I'm gonna have I'm looking at the art rares now, and they're just all so nuts. And you know, there's a Camilla Brute Bonnet in there, and Camilla is my favorite TCG artist, but Brute Bonnet's not my favorite Pokemon. But as far as Brute Bonnet goes,
but like, it's so Angie in the background.
It is. I am leaning towards the Veluza art rare, and the Morpeko art rare in my mind are just like are perfect. They're so cute. The Morpeko, especially the pile of sweets and the candy and all of that, angry. Looking extremely angry. But then the Veluza, it's just really serene and cool. There's like this underwater pastel like scene with a Staryu and light coming through the reefs. It's just it's a really
also it like
cool
sliced up another fish.
And it also sliced, I didn't even notice that, but yeah, also it's serene and murderous. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's death depicted on this card, let's be clear.
Which is why it's so sick.
That is pretty sick.
Yeah, and that's a Shibuzo work, and Shibuzo does some really good work too, so.
Yeah, I think there's a couple that jump out at me. I really think it's funny, the Gimmighoul and the Goldango having like the vertical continuous art. It's really funny and really cute. I love the Gimmighoul like posing like, "Yo, what's up, man?"
I know, with the arms crossed, dude.
Yeah, it's like you want to tussle.
Pokemon with
and
their
he's got
arms
like Daddy
crossed.
standing over him with the.
I know. There's something about
so
Pokemon with their arms crossed that really messes me up. Like, I love it. I'm thinking about Wartortle from Team Rocket, where he's like back against the wall.
Yeah, always funny. Always funny. I'll also give a shout out to Tapu Koko EX illustration rare. It kind of got that like vaporwave almost aesthetic, like very vibrant colors. And I really just like the background on that card more than anything. It's just really pretty. It's something I could see as like a desktop background, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
But my favorite, I think, is going to be the Iron Valiant illustration rare. I feel like I was not super sold on like any of the future forms when I played through Pokemon Violet, but this art makes them look so cool. Like,
yeah.
And I feel like that was completely lost when I was playing the video game, but I'm like, oh, these guys are actually sick now that I'm looking at them.
That's why the card game is the only part of the Pokemon franchise that matters.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool. You got Iron Valiant just standing there looking so badass, if I do say so myself.
Oh, 100%.
And you got the Iron Thorns like looking off into the sunset. He's ready to tussle. He's ready to tussle. And you got the Iron Bundle like way too close to the camera at the bottom of the card.
And there's one on the top left too.
I know,
right?
but I love the one that's like right up in your face. It's so funny.
Yeah.
It's just like, and the landscape, oh my gosh, it's like so beautiful. Yeah, just excellent portrayal of these Pokemon that really I didn't feel anything about playing the video game, and it just goes to show like how much like art and portrayal of the Pokemon like goes for the feel of them, you know?
Like I don't think that I could possibly feel anything about Golisopod, right? But then this Golisopod Secret Art Rare is so crazy. The Golisopod EX, like, dang, this thing looks creepy and like and cool. Like, what the heck? Like, I'm feeling things about Golisopod.
Yes, and you got the Wimpod as well. That's also like in like a cabin-like setting, you know, kind of living off their own means, crawling around like little roach / horseshoe crab guys. Like Pokemon and their art continues to level up their game. Honestly, I feel like it's just only gotten better, and like collectors be eaten for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to from the upcoming sets. Paradox Rift, and I think that's gonna do it for today's cast. Thank you all so much for listening, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you about this state of the game, Riley.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you all are interested in following along, you can check all of us out on Twitter. You can find myself at Smiles and Riles, Andrew at EnjoyFriend, and JW, who is absent today, at Real John Walter. Podcast also on Twitter at Tag Team Pokemon. You can also watch the podcast in video form on Andrew's channel, Chicky Jim, or follow us on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. That's going to do it for us today, but we really, really appreciate all of your continued listenership, and you all are what make this possible for us. So thank you for checking us out.
Thank you very much. We'll be back next week. See you.
Peace.